welcome to the GATE Show. GATE stands for Groton Advocates for Tax Efficiency. I'm Scott Ahmet, chairman of GATE. I'm also a representative on the RTM in District 6 in Groton. GATE was formed when a dozen or so concerned citizens in Groton got together and decided to do something about their local government. GATE was formed as a political action committee to express our issues and to be a source of information for our Groton taxpayers. We felt the electorate needed a better source of policies, processes, and ongoings on how and why their tax dollars are being used. Our overall mission is to provide a more transparent and informative source to Groton electorate so they can make more informed choices on how their tax dollars are being spent. Now to Rosanne Kotowski.
I would also like to welcome you to the GATE Show. The GATE Show came about in order to present the residents of Groton an alternative perspective to tax and spend. Today we are happy to welcome Dr. John Ramos, Interim Groton Superintendent of Schools, to discuss the Town of Groton Board of Education budget. The GATE members have prepared questions and submitted them to Dr. Ramos in advance. Scott?
I'd like to welcome you, Dr. Ramos. Thank you for coming.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, a brief story?
Sure. Born in Poughkeepsie, New York, grew up in Bridgeport, attended public schools through grade 9, and then because of an Upward Bound program, had the opportunity to go to Fairfield Prep for the rest of high school. So go Jesuits. Our new Pope is a Jesuit, right?
Right,
Good stuff. And then to Brown University for the bachelor's, University of Rhode Island for the master's, and the doctorate at Columbia University Teachers College.
Very
but
impressive.
more important than that, beautiful wife, been married 41 years. We have 2 children who are all grown up, and a godchild who is a senior in high school who lives with us, and that's the stuff that counts the most, right?
Well, thank you very much. First
Sounds
question
like
to
you have-
Rosanne.
You have a lovely family.
Thank you.
I'll just get right to it, Dr. Ramos.
All right.
You have publicly stated that the Groton school system is nearing a fiscal cliff. In response to that, you took a leadership role and presented a different approach in compiling the Board of Education budget this year. Could you please explain why you believe the Groton school system is nearing a fiscal cliff and how your proposal was intended to change that?
Sure. I mean, the fact is that the Groton Public Schools are at the precipice of the fiscal cliff, and the reason is that in the last few years, where the town has only been able to provide a budget without any increase, the budget's been bailed out, if you will, by the fact that there have been additional federal dollars available. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act dollars, the Ed Jobs Bill dollars, and those dollars help to stave off problems because contracts increase, transportation increases, insurance increases, and so forth, but the budget locally was the same. And so the federal dollars helped us carry on. Well, that money's gone now, you see. And so by example, last year, the Ed Jobs money left, and that money funded a number of paraprofessionals. Those paraprofessionals stayed on the payroll, but the money left. And so it's examples like that that put you now in a place where something's got to give. Right? Now, the second part of your question is that the board actually asked me to develop 2 budgets. One that reflected our ability to do exactly what we do today at this time next year, kind of a stay put budget. And then if that were to show an increase, then they wanted me to display what we might do to reduce the budget down to 0. So I showed them the 2 versions.
And how did you get to that point? You have a very interesting way of doing it by...
Well, what we did was we listened to union leaders, we listened to principals, and of course the people in central office, and board members who spoke to us, and we crafted a listing of potential cuts. Anything that anyone suggested, really, made that sheet of paper. And then internally we talked about each item on the list. And of course, we also put things on the list ourselves based on going through the budget line by line, right? So we crafted this list, and then we talked about every item. And the items that we thought didn't make sense for this community, we put in red. Things like pay for play or eliminating
Right.
all-day kindergarten. And then those items that we thought the board might consider eliminating or might actually consider reducing, we put in green. And then those items that we really thought deserved more conversation, we put in yellow. And we presented the board with about $4.8 million in potential reductions because a status quo budget would have meant a 5.5% increase or over $4 million.
Right.
So 4.8 million, I believe that you had a few additional items on the list just so they could pick and choose?
Right, that's exactly right. We had more money listed in potential cuts than was needed to balance the budget because we understood that some of the items, like for example, the IB program, might be items that would not make the final cut. We understood that, so we tried to give them additional items to consider in that event.
Thank you.
All right, continuing on with the budget theme. After the data provided by the administrators, building principals, detailing the areas of the budget that could be decreased, the board passed a budget of approximately $1.017 million increase. In your opinion, what areas may you have eliminated that did not get eliminated?
Well, see, I think
know it's tough.
well, actually, I think that there's a bit of a misconception about all this because inasmuch as I was asked to develop a budget that reflected a 0% increase and actually put those items to paper, some people read that to believe that these are any and all of these things are things we could have done without. The fact of the matter is that no matter what reductions you make in a business that's primarily about people is going to hurt. Any reduction is going to hurt. Okay?
Yep.
So from my perspective, I think that the town, when I say precipice and when I talk about fiscal cliff, and I talk about this idea that really the town is at a crossroads. And I think that your viewers, and certainly the RTM and the town council and the school board, at some point have to grapple with this. Where priorities are going to have to be made, or else you are going to suffer a loss of quality in the school district. It's just that simple. There's no two ways about that.
But you seem to have provided a blueprint in order for us to not kick the can down the road, so to speak.
Well, this I can tell you this, that if in the end the budget survives as in the form that it was passed on to the council and actually makes it through the council and through the RTM, the district will be at least able to carry on. It will be strenuous because you're going to have a lot fewer boots on the ground. We're talking about 80 positions here, okay? As it stands,
Right.
okay? Even with the 1.7% increase, it's 80 positions, okay? So it's going to be difficult. So given that scenario, we have to understand that if we do make it and we are able to enter the year with a 1.7% increase, next year when the budget cycle comes around, that's when the community's really got to grapple with this issue because there will be no more room.
Well, back to my question, though, as far as the cuts, though, are there maybe other cuts that could have been even less harsh to the education, maybe?
Well,
what I was kind of getting at.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I have to tell you that we really scrubbed this.
You did.
We scrubbed it, and we also tried to make it fair-handed. That is to say, we tried to spread the pain. Okay. Well, could somebody else, for example, the next superintendent, would that individual come in and perhaps see some things that we didn't see? That's possible. But we really made an honest effort.
Okay. Thank you.
And in the budget, there are increases of over $2 million in personnel costs, $1 million for raises, $1 million for benefits, contrasted with yearly declining enrollment figures, which have dropped 1,100 students since 2001, 20% in 12 years. To the taxpayer and our viewers, how can that be justified?
Sure.
Enrollment going down, salaries, benefits going up.
Sure. So if you look at that 10-year period and you think about just the fact that autism, as an example, has absolutely blown up all over the country in that period of time. The point being that more and more resources are taken to focus on the needs of the special needs that many children now bring to school. When you look at something like insurance, the insurance went up $1 million this year. This year, okay? And we all know what that's about. I mean, we all
Health insurance, right?
deal with that. Health insurance,
Yeah.
we all deal with that, right, in our own lives. And so I think that when you look at the numbers just raw that way, it reads one way. But when you really kind of peel away and look deeper, you can see that the intricacies of what goes on in these school buildings now is far different than even 10 years ago.
Thank you.
All right, continuing on with the subject of declining enrollment, you stated publicly that there are classes in Fitch High School that are undersubscribed, meaning underattended. The master's schedule, it states that there are nearly 600 classes at Fitch High School and almost 200 of them have less than 9 students. In your view, combining classes with no numbers, establishing minimum class sizes, or eliminating classes that do not fill, would that be a best option for cost effectiveness?
So I took a look at the numbers that you gave me in that regard, and I did a dive back into the schedule. And what I came to realize is that some of those classes that are very small are actually not classes, but they're tutorials, and they're not part of the teacher's load. They're in addition to the load. Some of them, but also there are some classes that are small that relate to, again, special ed, transition classes, and some of the IB classes are small, some of the AP classes are small, and so what we did this year, if you look at the budget cuts that were that actually went and were approved by the board, a number of teaching positions at the high school were reduced, and that in part is to correct that issue.
Okay, because to a person from the outside reading that list, it's really remarkable how many classes have 9 students and less.
Yeah, absolutely. If you just look at the raw numbers, I agree with you. I mean, when you said that to me, I said, "Wow, that doesn't sound right." And I looked at it, and then I could see why you said it, you know. And I made sure by checking my facts before I came in here that that's what it was. Yeah.
Right. Well, we just wanted to get it straight.
Absolutely.
We need some clarification. We appreciate that.
Well, and because we understand, you know, that there's tutorial classes, as you mentioned, and of course special ed. But it seems like there was Spanish 1 with 9 students, and then another Spanish 1 with 8 students.
Right. And hence the Spanish teacher's been eliminated.
Yeah,
You see that, and that's so in recognizing that, that in certain cases it doesn't fall in the categories that I mentioned. There are classes that are just plain small, and so that's why we eliminated some of the positions up there.
Thank you.
But see, I'm sorry, but see that.
It's okay.
But that also goes back to the point about, okay, we may be able to make it this year if we get that 1.7 without the overabundance of angst. But next year it's going to be very, very tight. What then? You see?
So you're saying there may be even more of a cost need next year, is what you're trying to say?
I'm saying that it would be virtually impossible to think about it this small of an increase or a 0 for the following year, unless people are willing to endure a lesser quality.
Well, people are going to have to start, in my opinion, thinking about what we can afford.
Yeah.
You know.
That's right. And so that's the balance.
More help,
you have to make
more help from
decisions.
the state.
Or help from the state.
Speaking of the state, that leads to the next question.
Segue.
Since most taxpayers are concerned with state mandates, could you please explain the minimum budget requirement to our viewers?
Sure. The minimum budget requirement is simply this, that a local municipality must give to the school district at least in a new fiscal year or a new budget cycle at least what it gave in the year prior, at a minimum. So some people are a bit confused when they think about the education cost sharing dollars that come from the state. And they think, well, hey, the state just gave another $1 million to Groton in educational cost-sharing money. Won't the school district get that? And the answer is no.
Really?
Because the town is the pass-through. The municipality is the pass-through for that money. And all the town is obligated to give us is the minimum budget requirement. That is the amount of money that they gave us the year prior. So new money doesn't necessarily have to pass through. See?
Interesting. And there are certain areas that towns can cut the budget with declining enrollment, if they build a new school and they have some cost savings. But we were told last year that Groton has a poverty designation, and therefore you can't cut the minimum budget requirement. Have you had an opportunity to find out about that?
Well, I know that Groton's free and reduced lunch population is growing. We're about 36% now. And that would suggest that certainly the poverty level is in place. So that makes sense to me. Yeah.
All right, next question is about programs.
Okay.
The IB, or International Baccalaureate Program, with a approximate cost of $400,000, was initially eliminated, as you mentioned, in the budget by the administrators, but was returned by the Board of Ed. Last year, we only had 5 students graduate from that program. Question is, do you believe that the Groton taxpayers should fund this present configuration? I know there was a lot of, at the Board of Ed meeting, there was a lot of talk and discussion about that. What's your opinion?
Yeah, the present configuration should not persist. And the choice that the board had to make was whether or not to cut off the life supply, right?
Right.
Or to make a commitment to grow the program, okay? Because in its present form, it cannot continue.
Right.
All right. So the decision was to grow the program. The intent is to look towards creating a grades 9 through 12 IB program as opposed to 11 and 12. Open it up to surrounding communities, because IB is actually a highly desirable program nationally, but it is a costly program to run.
Right.
If we can get the seats filled, then it makes good sense. It's actually helped distinguish Fitch High School. But if we can't get the seats filled, then it's not worth the money.
It's not worth it. Thank you.
Would it be better, more cost efficient, and for parents and taxpayers if we expanded our AP program instead?
Well, some people argued that, and it's sort of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You know, I mean, it makes a lot of sense from the perspective that students definitely, if they get the 3 or better, earn a college credit,
Right.
which helps defray costs when they get to college. I mean, there are lots of arguments for that.
Right.
On the other hand, the IB curriculum is different. And in this environment where we talk all the time about global education and the world is flat and all that stuff, you know, it does have its place. So again, if it's vibrant and it's working, then you know, the fact that it's helped distinguish Fitch High School is a good thing. But if it's sort of flat and the numbers are low, and it can't stay that way. So
say you were the superintendent next year, just for argument's sake, and we still had the same graduation numbers, would you recommend cutting it?
I think less.
They wanted to grow it.
I think less than that issue. For me, it would be how much progress have we made in working with the state.
So it's conditional.
In working with the state to make this a vibrant magnet for the area. Yeah. How much progress have we made in actually working with the IB folks to expand the program into grades 10 and 9? You know, how much interest have we created in the middle schools to create a group of students who will move in? So those would be the questions I would want to have.
So this is sort of like a $400,000 taxpayer-funded experiment.
Well, you see, if we had cut the program this year, if the board had eliminated the $400,000, actually, it wouldn't have been $400,000.
I understand that.
It would have cut off the lifeline, but in fact, it might have saved $100,000 in the end this year. Because this year's juniors have to have it next year. That's fair.
Right. Yeah. Sure. I remember that.
But still, if we're spending $400,000 to try to regionalize it, I mean, it just seems like the Groton taxpayers again are taking the expense for something that may or may not work.
So I understand that point, and I would only ask that you think about this. If they are able to grow the program as the intent is, then this Groton will have even more of a draw for people to want to come and live, because I tell you, if an IB program that's working is a match for any private school, right?
Okay.
And so if you can save that $35,000 that you would have sent when you would have sent your child to a private school, and you can go to a public school, right? Then you're going to move here, and you're going to pay the taxes.
Thank you. This year, Groton was placed on the Distressed Cities list in Connecticut, indicating our residents are financially struggling. According to the teacher database, compared with 7 similar towns, Groton had some of the highest paid teachers in that same sample group. Explain how struggling taxpayers can afford to keep paying these high salaries.
If I could explain that, then I have a bridge. No, I mean, the fact is that our teachers are in the top third in the area, and frankly, they deserve it. They really do. I mean, walk a day in a teacher's shoes and you'll know it. Okay, particularly a teacher who's intent about doing what he or she does. My jest just now is more about how I can explain to the taxpayer who's sort of had it up to here how they can dig deeper. I don't know how you explain that.
Right.
Okay, except to say that again, it comes down to whether or not the community is willing to suffer a loss in quality in terms of the education that its children receive. I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not. I mean, I pay taxes where I live. I mean, I live here during the week, as you know, but I do pay taxes where I live, where I own my house, and you know, I know it's not easy.
But if we're talking $1 million of $1 million increase in salaries and raises alone, what if they only got 2% instead of 2.75? I mean, it seems as though when we're negotiating these contracts, we have to understand that the taxpayers' pockets just don't go on forever.
Yeah, and so and as I'm sure you realize, when and if those negotiations go to arbitration, you know, if you can't come up with a decision to go to arbitration, then the arbitrator is going to look at what other districts are getting, you know, what the district's ability is to pay, and all of that, and we could have wound up with more, right?
Or less.
Likely more. And not to be argumentative at all, but what I'm suggesting to you is that there's an objectivity that an arbitrator will take, and frankly, it takes it out of our hands. I have to say to you that lots of these decisions get made without any real concern for, particularly by outsiders, without any real concern for the taxpayer, the local taxpayer. Not that they don't care, but they're making a decision based on data, right? So let's look at redistricting, right? A lot of people really struggle with redistricting because of the fact that it's going to cost this district over $500,000 to accomplish.
Yeah, 600.
Right? But that was not a matter of well, how will the taxpayer endure this? That was a matter of law, right?
State unfunded mandate.
Right. so sometimes these decisions are really passed on to us in a way that, at least in this case, we seized control of it. We kept it at 2.75. It didn't get worse, from a taxpayer perspective.
All right. Final question. Recent Connecticut Economic Resource Center information reports Groton mastery test scores and average SAT scores do not reach the state goals in any subject or any grade. What information do you have on recent SAT scores?
Actually, we beat the state in the last iteration, 2012, and you know, we always hover in the area there. We hold our own with the state, but we recognize that it can and should be better. And that's the challenge in a district that's diverse and has the economic scale that this community has. Those are the kinds of challenges we face. But you know what? We embrace those challenges.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. All right, in closing, I would like to point out a few things. We at GATE are very encouraged with Dr. Ramos taking a leadership role in his effort not to increase the education budget. This was an incredibly courageous act in our view. Education in Groton is 60% of its annual budget. As we discussed previously, once the budgets go up, they rarely go down due to the state mandates. If we cannot control spending as our revenue streams change, it will force our hand and raise taxes for everybody. It is our hope that the Council and RTM reconsiders the Board of Education's $1 million budget increase to give Dr. Ramos's efforts proper consideration and support, not to increase taxes. We feel that efficiencies and cost savings ideas should be implemented in both the town and the Board of Education. By supporting Dr. Ramos's initiative, the Town Council and RTM could be the voice for the people they were elected to represent and avoid the tax and mill rate increases that the residents and the business can afford in these times. I'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Ramos,
Thank you.
Comcast, GATE members and supporters. You can email us at Groton Advocates for Tax Efficiency at hotmail.com. I'd like to thank Rosanne especially for doing a lot of work. I am Scott Ament, and remember to open the gate to transparency. Thank you.